Welcome to day 28 of the New Way. Let's begin with John 1:19 and 20. Now this was John's testimony when the Jewish leaders in Jerusalem sent priests and Levites to ask him who he was. He did not fail to confess, but confessed freely, "I am not the Messiah." John the Baptizer said that he was not the Messiah. Now, a Messiah is someone who rescues or saves someone. For example, the firefighter was a welcome Messiah for the group trapped in the burning building. But this wasn't a Messiah that he was talking about. It was the Messiah. The Messiah, or Savior, or Christ, or Rescuer, was promised to the Jewish people by God during the time of Abraham. But the earliest mention of him was in Genesis 3, verse 15, in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. In Genesis 3:15, God is speaking to the serpent in the Garden of Eden. So this is with Adam and Eve after they've been tempted by the serpent. He's speaking to the serpent. In verse 15, he says, "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel." The Jewish scriptures, our Old Testament, contain over 300 prophecies concerning the Messiah. The people at the time thought that John the Baptizer might be the Messiah. Their second guess was a good one, though, and showed that they knew the prophecies well. Let me read from the Old Testament, or Jewish scriptures, from Malachi 4:5 and 6. "See, I will send the prophet Elijah to you before that great and dreadful day of the Lord comes. He will turn the hearts of the parents to their children, and the hearts of the children to their parents, or else I will come and strike the land with total destruction." Elijah was supposed to come and prepare the people for the day of the Lord. Let me read what Jesus said about John the Baptizer in Matthew 11:11 through 14. This is Jesus speaking. "Truly I tell you, among those born of women, there has not risen anyone greater than John the Baptist. Yet whoever is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has been subjected to violence, and violent people have been raiding it. For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John. And if you are willing to accept it, he is the Elijah who was to come." So Jesus says that John the Baptizer was the prophet Elijah. Now, I don't know whether he was saying he was a prophet like Elijah, or whether he was saying that John the Baptizer was Elijah reincarnated. I personally believe that he was saying that John the Baptizer was like the prophet Elijah in his obedience and his behavior. But I don't know. It's one of those mysteries we'll have to wait and ask in heaven. Let's continue to read what John the Baptizer said about himself to the Jewish leaders. That's John 1:19 through 23. Now this was John's testimony when the Jewish leaders in Jerusalem sent priests and Levites to ask him who he was. He did not fail to confess, but confessed freely, "I am not the Messiah." They asked him, "Then who are you? Are you Elijah?" He said, "I am not." "Are you the prophet?" He answered, "No." Finally they said, "Who are you? Give us an answer to take back to those who sent us. What do you say about yourself?" John replied in the words of Isaiah the prophet, "I am the voice of one calling in the wilderness. Make straight the way for the Lord." Now, I think it is curious that John the Baptizer said that he was not the prophet. There are scholars who feel that John the Baptizer didn't want people to confuse him with Elijah, because this prophecy from Malachi was actually referring to Elijah coming before the day of the Lord, which would be at Jesus' second coming. So possibly to avoid confusion, he claimed to not be the prophet. Others believe he was just being modest. Another topic for us to discuss in heaven, because we won't know for sure until then. John the Baptizer simply claimed to be a voice preparing the way for the Messiah. He warned the people to prepare their hearts to listen. I think John the Baptizer was called to be like a herald, a person who ran ahead of the king and announced his arrival so that people could get ready and be prepared to receive their king. Part of his assignment was to make the people aware of their sins and therefore their need for a Savior. I believe that John the Baptizer was part of the cocoon that was to prepare the people for a Messiah. John stayed focused on what he was called to do. He didn't get distracted by the attention of the crowds or by the religious leaders and their questions. He did well what he was called to do, and Jesus had high words of praise for him later. We'll continue this discussion tomorrow. In his service, Dale.